80 years ago, a comic was released. It was filled with work from some of the most talented writers and artists of their day, and those visionaries laid the groundwork for what would eventually become one of the most successful and lucrative fictional universes of all time. And now, in front of all your eyes, for your amusement, I, a talentless hack, shall tear apart their work. That's the beauty of the internet working as it should. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Tale Showcase, where, make no mistake, we're going to enjoy this, but we kind of wish we had chosen a smaller book. Like, make no mistake, we're going to enjoy ripping apart the work of legendary creators, but it's a really long book. It's a nightmare. It's gonna murder me in editing, for sure. I'm your host, the Watcher of New Earth. Well, we're celebrating Marvel's 80th anniversary in style by reading Marvel Comics #1, which actually came out October 1st, 1939. Well, I should clarify that there's some contention on whether or not that was the actual date. You see, Marvel celebrated their anniversary August 31st, which to me felt that they were signifying that that was the day that this issue was released. And fair, but there's some sources that say it was October 1st, and then other sources still that say October 2nd. So, just so we can settle all these arguments, okay? Just unbiased opinion, I'm right. Okay? Are we all in agreement here? That's fair, right? I'm right? Okay, good, great, awesome. So we're celebrating Marvel Comics #1 exactly 80 years after it came out. Because I'm right. And we're all agreeing that I'm right. Right? Okay. So, since this issue is so big, it's really because there's several stories inside. It's not just the one story. Which I didn't know when I stupidly thought to do this like 3 months ago. But anyway, that means that I'm not going to go into my whole regular spiel of like, oh, this was written by and drawn by. I'm just going to do it like as I get to the stories, and we'll just go on from there, okay? And this video is going to be already longer than probably most of my videos on here, so let's not waste any more time and let's get started. This is Marvel Comics #1.
The comic opens with a small collection of one-panel jokes. They're dated and hokey, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy them. Unfortunately, they're not credited to anyone, and I was unable to find any information on who might have made them. The first story we get is written and drawn by Carl Burgos, who had been working in comics for about a year at that point. It opens with Professor Horton, a seemingly renowned scientist, as he speaks to the press. Yes, all 2 of them. He explains that he's been working on a synthetic human, an android, if you will. However, as he shows it off to them, he explains that there is one problem with it. With that, he allows oxygen to enter the chamber the android is housed in, and it suddenly catches fire, much to the surprise of the 2 reporters. For anyone confused, yes, this is the Human Torch, but it's a different character to the Human Torch of the Fantastic Four. He would debut a little over 2 decades later. The reporters tell Horton to destroy the robot to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. When Horton refuses, they say that he'll sing a different tune once they publish this in the papers.
If you're genuinely concerned about this falling into the wrong hands, then why would you let the general public know that there's a man who can just turn into fire?
With his creation now public knowledge, Horton gets a call from the Scientists Guild, who are interested in seeing the Torch. They arrive that night to study him. My favorite part of this is how they're all gathered around discussing this seriously, and the Torch is just in his little case waving at them. He's just trying to break the tension, the poor little guy. The Guild agree that the best course of action would be to destroy the android. Horton begins to protest, but they offer him an out by saying he could lock the android away in cement while he figures out a way to control it. Horton is elated by this seemingly simple idea.
So, let me get this straight. You were smart enough to create an android in the 30s that can turn into fire, but that's more of a design flaw. But you were able to design an android in the 30s, and yet you didn't have the intelligence enough to say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to hide him away until I can figure out how to make him work, and then I'll tell everybody about it. No, some guy had to come to your house and tell you to do that? That never crossed your... Okay. It's whatever, dude.
And so it is that the Torch is sealed in an airtight tube and encased in cement where he remains forever. Just kidding. There's a huge explosion, then he's free. It's revealed that some oxygen was able to leak in. You know, that cement-piercing oxygen. Anyway, the Torch is now free and causing havoc, but with an innocent, childlike air about him. When the firemen arrive, he doesn't even register that he's the problem. He merely remarks that he likes the bells and that the water tickles him. He runs away and eventually makes it to an estate with a pool which he dives into, hoping that'll quench the fire. Inside the house, a lackey tells his boss, Sardo, that the grass around the pool is on fire. Sardo immediately takes this to mean that the Torch is on his property.
You don't know that it was the Human Torch that set your lawn on fire. It could have been hoodlums. Did pranks not exist in the 30s?
Sardo and his lackey capture the android and immediately come up with the idea to use him to shake down businesses into buying fire insurance. A while later, he goes to the office of a local steel manufacturer. He tells the secretary to announce his arrival and to tell her boss that it's hot stuff. The steel guy knows Sardo's deal from the get-go and tells him to leave. Later that night, Sardo and his men take the Torch to one of the steel warehouses and set him loose. In the midst of the flames, the Torch quietly contemplates on whether or not Sardo is on his side, and if he might have gotten mixed up with a racketeer.
So the Torch doesn't understand from context clues that the fire engine is there to, quench his flames? He's just there standing like a child, enjoying the bells ringing? But a racketeer! That he understands. He knows that's wrong. Consistency, guys. Come on.
Realizing he's been made into a patsy, the Torch flies out of the warehouse and makes his way back to Sardo's. As the Torch arrives, Sardo flees back to his secret bunker. The Torch searches for his kidnapper to no avail, but manages to set the house on fire in the process. He instead turns his attention towards Sardo's henchmen. They scatter, but the Torch jumps to the car to prevent their escape, thoroughly melting it and trapping one guy underneath.
Marvel's first hero, ladies and gentlemen, literally boils a man to death underneath his own car.
With the others taken care of, the Torch goes back inside and finds the entrance to the bunker, easily melting through the two doors and making his way inside. However, before either of them do anything, they hear fire engines outside. The Torch goes to investigate and finds Horton trying to remove a nitrogen tank. The Torch flies in to help and the tank explodes, quenching its flames. The fire chief then fires at the Torch, only to have the bullet melt on the skin, because it is apparently still very, very hot.
The bullet melts when it hits his skin because it's too hot. Oh, alright. Could have just made him bulletproof. He's an android. We wouldn't have questioned it.
The Torch returns downstairs, his flames returning as he approaches Sardo. Sardo, somehow, knows that it was the nitro that made this happen, and tries to make a deal by offering the Torch another tank of it in exchange for letting him go. The Torch makes a counteroffer by ripping the tank from Sardo's hands and telling him he can forget it. Sardo pleads he'll do anything if the Torch doesn't burn him.
Don't burn me, bro! Don't burn me!
The Torch refuses once more and begins to tear apart Sardo's lair. Sardo, now making a last-ditch effort, grabs a vat of acid that he just had lying around and prepares to throw it on the android. However, it explodes beforehand and kills Sardo. Horton arrives and asks the Torch what happened. The Torch simply answers that it's over and goes deeper into the house to try out the nitro. He is soon able to control the flames at will. A little later, the police arrive and the Torch flees, but then gives a willingly, but then just, it's a little confusing.
So, let's see if I have this correctly. He's walking on the street, and a car starts following him, but he doesn't know. But then he thinks it might be, and so then he starts running. But then a bunch of cars go around him, and then he's like, oh, I didn't know that you were trying to get me. Okay, come get me. But then the police are there, and they're, oh no, he's on fire. We can't get him. What are we gonna do? But then he's like, no, wait. I can turn the flame off. It's cool. We're all good. Now you can get me. Anybody else puzzled by that sequence of events and seemed... I feel like I missed something.
The Torch is then taken to court, but Horton is able to get the judge to allow him to keep the Torch under his custody. On the drive home, the Torch tells Horton that he can now control his flames. much to Horton's surprise.
You didn't realize that he could now control his flame because you're in a car with him and are not on fire?
Back in the lab, the torch displays his newfound abilities to the amazement of Horton. Before long, however, Horton decides that this could net him a huge fortune and tells the torch his idea. The android, having already had enough of humanity's greed, decides to peace out as the story ends with him abandoning Horton in search of a better life. The next story is written and drawn by Paul Gustafson, another early days creator who continued to work in the industry through the 50s. The story opens with a series of mob shakedowns across several businesses. Several men decide they've had enough and go to the mayor's office. The mayor and police chief wish they could help, but since no witnesses will testify, their hands are kinda tied. One of the men then demands that they be given special investigator status and have free reign to act as they see fit.
Yes, Mayor, we're coming to you for help for all these people that aren't listening to you or the police. So give us all power so we don't have to listen to you or the police ever again.
One of the men then suggests that they call in the vigilante the Angel for help. The police chief objects, saying that the Angel will stop at nothing to catch the criminals.
Why wouldn't you want that? Would you prefer someone who took upholding the law as a hobby instead?
Before they can discuss it anymore, though, a rock crashes in through the window with a note. Apparently, the Angel not only agrees to help, but already has a list of the men responsible, plus their mysterious boss. Side note, nice stationery. Days later, as one of the six steps out of the courthouse, the shadow of an angel appears on a building. Suspecting trouble, he flees to his car, but unbeknownst to him, the Angel heads him off. And can we take a sec to look at this goof? Aside from the wings on his chest, nothing about him says Angel, and as we've discussed in the past, half the superhero gig is about branding. Other than that, it's very clearly Superman-inspired, but you shouldn't fault it too hard. At this point, Supes was the superhero, so you'd expect some traits would carry over as creators tried to figure out the genre. Anyway, he kills the dude in his car. He then pays a visit to the next guy on the list and makes short work of him. His buddy, who was in the same room, freaks out and tries to escape through the window, but he mistakenly picks the one without a fire escape and falls to his death, which might just be the funniest part of this whole comic. Meanwhile, a woman enters the room, leaves a note, and goes back out. The Angel reads it, and it reveals that number 3 was the guy who jumped out the window, and that number 4 is now waiting for him.
So not only did you write a letter that you could have just said, but also, when did you write the letter? Was it when he was near the window and you have ESP and you understood that he was going to jump out? Or was it as he was falling? You didn't have time to write the letter is what I'm saying, so why did you? Why did you write that letter, mystery woman?
The Angel rushes over to the next guy, but is clearly outnumbered. Though he puts up a solid fight, he's eventually overpowered. Now captured, the Angel is threatened by number 4, who says that he's going to use a Tommy gun to tear him apart very slowly.
Are Tommy guns known for being slow? Do I just have like a really weird conception of what a Tommy gun is?
Before anything happens, however, the woman from before enters the room. She says that she has orders from their boss and they're supposed to take the Angel out of the city to kill him. So she, the Angel, and 2 other guys drive out of town. They tie the Angel to a tree, but at the last moment the lady unties him. He then manages to grab one of the guys, who happens to be number 5, and number 4 proceeds to start shooting. In a panic, 5 shoots back, and they both kill each other. The woman escapes in the car, and the Angel not being able to catch up with her. Later, the Angel appears to number 6 and ends him quickly. He then checks the desk where he finds a note that says he was meant to take the money and deposit it in the bank at 10. The Angel, seeing his time running out, rushes over to the bank where he finds the woman from before and the boss, who turns out to be the guy who first called for the Angel's help. Once he goes in and captures them, the Angel explains that he deduced that they wanted the other 6 gone so they wouldn't have to split the earnings. And then the comic just ends.
That's... Hang on. That... How is that... That's everything? You killed all the other 6 men without remorse, but the guy who was manipulating you the whole time, you just let him go? The hell?
The next comic is made by writer-artist Bill Everett, who had been working in the industry for a while at that point, who would, decades later, play a part in creating the character Daredevil. This, however, was the most popular character that was wholly his, Namor the Submariner, a character he would continue to work with on and off again until his death in 1973. The story opens with a group of divers exploring a wrecked ship. When one of them comes up, he remarks that it seems like someone else had been there before them, recently. More men go down to explore, and they see what looks like someone swimming. They get closer to investigate as the swimmer is revealed as Namor, who mistakes the divers for robots of some kind.
You'd think that Atlantis would stay up to date on what the latest technology is for humans going into the ocean, and then make sure that everybody in Atlantis knows that, because, that seems important.
Namor decides to leave, but before he does, he cuts all the wires that he thinks are controls. He then goes and straight up murders the divers. The crew above water sense something is wrong and send another diver down. He quickly takes in what happened and heads back up to alert everyone else. They begin to leave, but Namor grabs the ship and crashes it into the shore. He takes the divers and returns home, gifting them to the Emperor of Atlantis. His mother arrives to congratulate him on his mission. This prompts her to begin explaining why Atlantis hates the surface world and how Namor came to be.
Ah, Namor, let us continue this completely natural conversation as I transition seamlessly into your origin story, so that anybody listening, or reading, can figure out exactly who you are, what you're about, and what your deal is. Anything else that a potential new reader might need to know so that they can buy the next issue.
In 1920, a ship arrived near Atlantis. They begin bombing the ice floe above Atlantis, because science. They send Namor's mom, Fen, to infiltrate the Earthmen. She quickly befriends them and even falls in love with Captain Leonard Mackenzie, who would become Namor's father.
And that's all fine and dandy, but it doesn't seem to me that she mentions anywhere here that she told them at any point in time that Atlantis was there, or that there were people there. Which, she might have left out, sure, but that seems like an important thing to do on your big surface mission. Particularly if you fall in love with the man up here, bear his son, and don't tell him that the father is bombing his own people. And sure, I'm not saying that if you told them that there were people there that they would stop bombing. As a human, I'm fully aware we're idiots. However, I feel that you are grossly misjudging us if you assume that we're just bombing you for the fun of it. It's very egocentric is all I'm saying.
So the bombings never stop and the Atlanteans have to retreat. Fen tells Namor that it is his duty to fight and to go forth to the land of the white people.
Yes, they go to the land of the white people. You watch out, NASCAR. They're coming for you.
Namor prepares to leave on his quest when his cousin, Dorma, asks to tag along.
Oh, cousin dearest, won't you let me please join you on your terrorist mission?
Namor agrees to let her come with and begins his war against humanity. And his first target? A lighthouse. Alright. He proceeds to wreak havoc and fight a seemingly endless number of guys. He finishes by smashing the light so boats won't be able to see the shore. He escapes by flying himself and Dorma onto a nearby plane. And the story ends with Namor telling her to crash the plane somewhere and go home, as he plunges back into the ocean to continue his adventures.
See, now, I understand that you want to split up Namor and his cousin because in the next issue you might not want her around. Sure, I get that. But why would you leave her on the plane considering she can only survive a limited time outside of water? When you can just fly. I mean, I'm just saying.
The next story is a western, based on the Masked Raider character that had been established a few years prior. Though he's not credited, it was written and drawn by Al Anders, who I unfortunately couldn't get that much information about, though it seems his career in comics began and ended with the Golden Age. The story opens with Jim Gardley, a small-time rancher, being bullied by the men of Cal Brunder, who's attempting to get all the ranchers to sell him their land. Brunder sees that Gardley remains obstinate and decides to call in the sheriff and frame Gardley for stealing livestock. Gardley is hauled away to jail, where he realizes that something must be done about Brunder. He calls the sheriff, claiming to be sick, and knocks out the sheriff, making his escape.
Nothing says innocent quite like tricking the guard to come check on you, beating them, and then escaping.
He steals the sheriff's horse and rides off, eventually abandoning the horse to avoid raising suspicion. Out on his own, he trains for weeks to become the best and fastest gunslinger. When he feels ready to start his mission, he searches for a horse, eventually finding one he thinks will do. However, despite his best efforts, the horse refuses to be caught. Until one day it just trapped itself for Gardley to catch.
So then what was the point of saying it was uncatchable if then it's just gonna catch itself like an idiot? There was no point, is what I'm getting at.
Gardley trains with the horse, which he decides to call Lightning, and soon gets a mask, adopting the identity of the Masked Raider, swearing to protect and serve the little guy. Back in town, however, Brunder and his men are getting even more and more rowdy, and the ranchers decide that they're probably going to have to sell. As things get worse, the newly appointed masked ranger arrives at the sheriff's office and asks if he's ready to help serve the town once more. The sheriff just asks who the guy is and kind of weirdly just states that he's masked.
Yes, Sheriff. He is masked. That's why you don't recognize him.
The sheriff eventually gets over his initial confusion and agrees to help out the raider. The new hero then begins to round up Brunder's men and then confronts the main guy, Slick. The raider asks if he's ready to walk to jail or if he's going to have to be dragged, to which Slick answers that the guy is masked.
Why is everybody so hung up on the mask? Yes, he's wearing a mask to hide his identity. They clearly know what a mask is, so just, from context, assume what it's for. You're treating it like he grew a toe on his forehead.
The masked raider, now confident in his abilities, manages to round up the rest of Brunder's gang, including Brunder himself. And the comic ends with the sheriff saying that, despite this problem being all fixed up, he wonders if that strange masked man will return to tackle the bigger game. Whatever that means. The next story is Jungle Terror, credited as a complete adventure story and written and drawn by one Tom Dixon, who was actually a pseudonym for Art Pinagian, which I'm definitely mispronouncing, so I apologize. He worked in comics all through the Golden Age and eventually went on to become a highly respected artist. Good for him! The story opens at the Florida home of Professor Roberts, where his nephew Tim is talking with Ken Masters. No. They discuss how the professor has been missing for the last couple months after a supposed exploration in the jungle, and they vow to go find him the following morning. Unbeknownst to them, they are being spied on, and the man goes to tell John Crafton, the owner of the adjoining plantation, that they're leaving in the morning. Why does John Crafton care what these people are doing? I don't know. Why should I care what they're doing? That answer's easy. I don't. The following morning, Tim and Ken are on their way and being followed by Crafton. However, as they're over the jungle, the plane starts to go down suddenly, with Masters replying that the motor's missing.
Is motor missing, like, engineer talk or something? Because if there's any engineer that ever watches this video for some reason, please let me know. I would appreciate it, because until I'm proven otherwise, I'm just going to assume that this guy was flying a plane with no motor and didn't realize after flying it for an extended period of time and until he reached his destination. That's what I think now.
Tim and Ken survive the crash. Thank goodness, I suppose. Still, Ken carries Tim because, I don't know, his leg probably aches or something. Who cares? Before they can get a move on, though, some natives arrive and they're now captured. Crafton and his men, meanwhile, have landed a little ways away and begin their pursuit. But they too only make it a little farther before one of them is killed and the other two are captured. Tim and Ken are now at the village where Tim remarks that he's fine, and this is why he's standing now.
Thank you so much for clarifying that you were alright. We never would have understood from context. Just by seeing you standing on your own, we never would have understood. We would have kept flipping back pages and being... he was hurt just a few pages ago. How is he standing now? Thank you so much for saying that you're fine now.
They throw them in a little hut, and it's revealed that that's where Professor Roberts is. He reveals that the natives were initially friendly to him. However, when they realized that he was after their hypnotic diamonds, they turned against him and threw him in there.
It's so weird. We were all good until I started trying to steal from them.
However, as they enter, Professor Roberts reveals that he's recently found a hole. Why he didn't use that hole to escape, that's just one of life's many unanswered questions. So they go, and it leads, wouldn't you know it, right to a giant haul of diamonds. Yep. However, before they can line their pockets, Crafton arrives, revealing that they landed after they landed and were also captured by savages, and then put into a hut, and then they escaped into the jungle and found a cave, and that's where they ended up. Look at his face. He genuinely thinks that he outsmarted them somehow.
Why are you saying it like you outsmarted anybody? Everything that just happened, if it happened the way that you explained it, was by accident or due to your sheer incompetence. What are you doing?
However, before anything else goes down, the natives arrive and kill Crafton and his one remaining man. The trio escape and manage to find Craftson's plane, eventually flying out of there as the comic ends, revealing that Professor Roberts did manage to get a diamond. Guys, don't even worry about it. That's the end.
And the story's just over. Forget that it was a hypnotic diamond. Who wants to see them do something with a hypnotic diamond? What does that matter? Everybody just goes home. It's great. They stole from native people. Everybody should feel good. This is marketed as a complete adventure story, and somehow I feel completely unsatisfied.
The next story is not really a comic per se. It's 2 pages of just text. This was actually a necessity back in the day because it was a way to get the comics actually shipped, which is a fun bit of trivia, and it's written by Ray Gill, who would continue to work for comics all throughout the Golden Age. I'm not going to tell you the story of this story, I guess, but anyway, I'm not gonna read the story. It's bad. Just trust me on it. The characters are bad. It doesn't make any sense. The characters don't talk like people. Things just kind of happen, and there's no really sequence of events. It's bad. It's bad, and I don't like it, and it's definitely the worst part of this comic, and it's only 60% because I don't like reading things without pictures. Alright? But we're moving on. Our next and final story is actually on Kazar, a character that was created by Bob Bird, although this comic was written by Ben Thompson, another creator who seemed to have dropped off after the Golden Age of comics, but who also created the Golden Age hero, the Blue Diamond. So there you go. There's a shout out for you, all you Blue Diamond fans. The story opens with a plane carrying a family crashing into the Belgian Congo. The family is alive, but the wife seems to be the worst off, with her leg broken. They decide to settle there for a while as John Rand, the husband, tends to his wife's wounds. David, the son, meanwhile explores, finding a kinship with the animals. Too much of a kinship, in fact, considering that a leopard jumps at him and he doesn't move, only his father shooting a gun and killing it saving him. David mourns the passing of the leopard, and the father is seemingly impressed at how the child has no fear of animals.
Oh, I know why you're admiring him so much. There's a technical term for what he has. Hang on, give me a sec. It's right here somewhere, right? Here it is. Stupidity.
As the days pass, John Rand spends his time sending smoke signals and waving tarpaulins around, hoping to catch a view of one of the planes on the supposedly busy highway, but eventually the planes stop searching for them and they seem to be stranded. To make matters worse, the wife eventually dies, due to catching some illness in the jungle. Intent on keeping the promise to his wife that the boy would live, he plans a way out, hoping to walk to the nearest outpost, but claiming that it's 200 miles to the nearest white outpost.
God forbid it's anything but a white outpost.
On the night they plan on making their way out, a giant storm arrives. As they try to run through it, a tree falls on them, hitting John Rand and giving him amnesia. But only amnesia that makes him forget that he ever lived in civilization, and making him believe that the jungle is his home. But everything else about him, that stays the same.
Well, that sure is convenient to the story.
As the months pass, David continues to explore the jungle and befriend every animal that he can, even befriending the lion Czar after he frees him from some quicksand. One day, they come across a seemingly malintentioned explorer who seeks to ravage the land for its resources. You know, what the heroes of the last story were doing. Anyway, they tell him to leave or else there will be consequences, you know the whole thing. As they walk away, John tells his son to always remember that the jungle is sacred. Sacred to his mother.
Yeah, it's sacred because she died here. Remember that? She died here.
The next day, David goes to check on the intruder's camp, and it's seemingly abandoned. David decides to explore, but for some reason, they decide to phrase it as him fingering the strange articles around the camp.
Good night, everybody.
Before long, however, he begins hearing noises from his own camp, and rushes over, only to see his house on fire. He rushes over to his father, who's on the ground, as this is revealed to, of course, be the work of the man that they had met earlier. Before they can do anything to David, though, Czar the lion arrives and saves the boy from the men. However, it's too late to the father, as he says his last words in David's arms. And, is it me, or is it bolded incorrectly?
Too late, son. I'm dying!
And the comic ends with David burying his father, adopting the name Kazar, which means brother of Czar, and heading out into the jungle for further adventures.
And that was Marvel Comics #1. It's a bit of a mixed bag, but overall, it's bad.
Okay, so the comic isn't wholly bad. There's good stuff to it. The art is, for the time, pretty good. I mean, sure, it's no Alex Ross, George Perez, or Babs Tarr, but for the time, I think it holds up extraordinarily well. And there's no, grotesquely disfigured people. It's good, I think. And while the stories are either bland or nonsensical in some places, the ideas there are strong. The ideas and conceptions of the characters are good, just that they're a little unrefined. And I think that's partly due to how, since this is a more packaged comic, none of the stories really have their own space to breathe. Or other stories have to be artificially inflated, like Namor. The original story was only 8 pages long, and the last 4 pages are actually tacked on, specifically to meet the requirements of this book. And of course, the stories aren't exactly equal. Some are much, much worse than others. And look, I'm not gonna be all petty and start listing out which one was the best, which one was... Just kidding, yes I am! I believe the Submariner story is best, followed by the Human Torch, then the Masked Raider, then Angel, then Kazar, then Jungle Terror, and last and certainly least, Burned Rubber. Now, is there favoritism here? Probably, considering that the characters that I had already known are higher up on the list. That said, I think that they are still the most fleshed out personalities of this whole comic. They're the characters that we keep coming back to because there's interesting stuff to be done with them. Hell, even the Masked Raider, after disappearing from Marvel Comics pretty much entirely since the 40s, has actually recently made a comeback and looks to be now a pivotal player in the Marvel Universe. It just goes to show that, despite this book's shortcomings, what works here really works.
And look, a lot of the stuff in this book is not good. It has not aged well, and if we're being frank about it, it was never going to age well. But what is good in this book, the themes, the characters that have still persevered through decades, that's what matters. And sure, it's easy to make fun. It's ridiculously easy to make fun. Trust me. To make fun of the leaps in logic and how they don't really have the superhero theme down. But you have to realize they were pioneering this. Superman was a year before. This was all brand new to people. They didn't know what they were doing, so can you really blame them for not hitting the ball out of the park every single time? I don't think so. Does that excuse the bad writing in this book? No, I don't think it does. And I think it's okay for it not to be great. It's not supposed to stand the test of time. The reason that we get newer stories every year is because we keep getting new ideas. Better ideas to expand upon. But you know what? As ashamed as we might be of our roots, as ridiculously ashamed, I think where we are now, that's due in part to this book, I think that's special. And so this book isn't the best thing ever. So what? Because of this book, and the thousands of writers that came after that put better work out, we have an amazing universe that we all get to share. And that's something special. So, despite me not liking this book, I'm grateful to it. Anyway, despite all I just said, I await your hate comments. Send me an email saying how incorrect I am. My social media is on the channel page. Go ahead and spam me there. I welcome your rage. As always, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. This is the Watcher of New Earth, signing off. Hi, I'm the Watcher of New Earth. If you like that video, hit that subscribe button, maybe even the bell icon. It probably does something, right? I mean, YouTube hired someone to put it there, so the least we could do is show appreciation by hitting it.